4 years after the divorce. I was at the hospital with my daughter for a follow-up when I ran into him, visiting his newborn son. He said he had never forgotten me, and then turned around and donated $5 million for his new lover. He said he wanted to make up for his daughter. But back then, for the sake of his mistress, he forced me to have an abortion and caused my grandmother's death. Now he has abandoned his wife and child, seeking reconciliation, thinking I would return to him? Ha, just wait. I'm going to make him fall from the clouds and into the mud, and let him taste what it feels like to lose everything. After all, my grandmother taught me, revenge must be exacted. In the 4th year after our divorce, I ran into Ji Chongsheng at the hospital. I was there to pick up a medical report, and he was visiting his newborn son. We bumped into each other in the elevator, but neither of us said anything. It wasn't until I stepped out of the elevator that he suddenly followed me in a few quick steps. Zhang Yu, what illness did you get? Do you need help? I shook my head. It's not me, it's my child. That's when he noticed the little girl in the floral dress sitting on the waiting chair. From a narrow hallway, Ji Chongsheng looked at Zhang Cheng. The 3-year-old girl curiously peeked out, and her features were strikingly similar to his. After a moment of silence, Ji Chongsheng turned to me, confirming, "This is our child?" I nodded without hiding anything. He was silent for a moment, then furrowed his brows and asked, "Why didn't you tell me?" I looked at him, suddenly remembering the miscarriage from years ago. Back then, Ji Chongsheng had been angry with me because of Nuan. When he found out I was pregnant, to punish me, he forcefully sent me into the operating room and made me terminate the pregnancy. I didn't cry on the way to the hospital, but when the cold instruments pierced me, I cried from the pain. I thought I would always remember that pain, but now, looking back, I could calmly answer him. When I found out I was pregnant with Zhang Cheng, she was already 7 months along. I was afraid that if you found out, you would force me to terminate again. At that stage, an abortion would be too harmful to my body. It would cost me half my life. Ji Chongsheng froze. That's not what I meant. What illness does she have? A congenital heart valve defect. Ji Chongsheng turned to look at Zhang Cheng, his expression hard to read. I heard him say, "I'll contact some top experts in this field. No matter the cost, I'll make sure she's treated." "No need," I interrupted him. Cheng had surgery last month, and the doctor said she's recovering very well. I ended the small talk with him. "If there's nothing else, I'll be going." But Ji Chongsheng stopped me again. "The treatment isn't cheap. Do you have enough money? What I mean is, if you need it, you can come to me for help." I took Zhang Cheng's hand and turned to leave the building. "No need. Once the rain stops, there's no point in sending an umbrella." The nurses in the stairwell were chatting. Each one was holding a package of candy. One of the nurses, who knew me, handed Zhang Cheng 2 large white rabbit milk candies and explained, "Upstairs is Mr. Ji Yu, the CEO of Huayang Group. His wife gave birth to a son this morning, and Mr. Ji Yu is so happy. He's handing out candy to everyone." I overheard them chatting, saying how lucky it is to be Mr. Gu's child, born into luxury, already in Rome. They said today, because Mr. Ji Yu was so happy, he donated 5 million to the hospital, and that his wife is gentle and quiet, the perfect match for him. I listened calmly, without a stir in my heart, until I heard, "Mr. Ji Yu is actually remarried. His previous wife was from the countryside. A crazy woman who caused a scene downstairs at his office, even hitting him in public. Mr. Ji Yu put up with it for 3 years, but he couldn't take it anymore. And that's when they got divorced." Upon hearing this, the nurses sighed. Poor Mr. Ji Yu. How could he marry such a crazy woman? She was so stupid to not appreciate such a good man, instead ruining herself as his ex-wife. Mr. Ji Yu remarried and found happiness, so he deserves it. I couldn't help but laugh. So this is how I had become the crazy ex-wife in their stories. But I didn't argue. I just gently patted Zhang Cheng's head and began walking downstairs. Suddenly, the crowd grew silent, and I looked up curiously, only to see, at some point, Ji Chongsheng had walked into the stairwell. His voice was cold as he spoke to the nurses. "My ex-wife is not like that. Please don't spread rumors. She's actually a good person." His words were meant for the nurses, but his eyes, looking over the crowd, fell on me. I didn't stop walking. In truth, the nurses weren't wrong. When I was with Ji Chongsheng, I did act a bit crazy. Ji Chongsheng had been sold into our village. The couple who bought him couldn't have children. But after they got him, they had a son the following year. From what I remember, Ji Yu Chongsheng had a very hard childhood. He worked all day and was always hungry and cold. My grandmother couldn't bear to watch him suffer, so she invited him over to eat. As the smoke rose from the stove, the table was set, and Ji Yu Chongsheng and I sat side by side, eating together. Every time he was beaten, he would run to my house. My grandmother would tenderly treat his wounds and sigh, saying this couldn't go on forever. So, this old woman, who had spent her whole life in the mountains, walked for miles to the town to search for his parents. Even Ji Yu Chongsheng thought they were lost. But my grandmother never gave up. To everyone's surprise, she actually found them. It turned out that Ji Yu, in his name, came from the Ji Yu family in the northern city. When they came to pick him up, it was a grand event, with dozens of cars racing into the mountains, something I had never seen before. When Ji Yu Chongsheng left, he took me with him. My grandmother waved goodbye from the car window, saying there were better schools outside the mountains, and we should study hard. That year, we were both 16. For the next 10 years, Ji Yu Chongsheng and I were on the same path, naturally transitioning from companionship to love. He married me under the pressure of the Ji Yu family and prepared a dream wedding for me. I still remember the way he lifted my veil and kissed me. It was as sincere as kissing the moonlight. At the time, I was full of expectations, thinking I was heading toward happiness. But little did I know, most good things are fragile and fleeting. I attended in my finest dress, but I was heading toward heartbreak. I sponsored a rural girl named Shang Nuan. She was a diligent girl, and after the college entrance exam, she managed to get into the school in the northern city. I picked her up from the train station, booked a hotel for her, and took her around the city to get familiar with it. I even promised to accompany her to register at the school on the first day. But the night before school started, I received a call from home saying that my grandmother had fallen and broken her leg. I immediately bought a ticket to go home, thinking that Shang Nuan had a lot of luggage and wouldn't be able to carry it alone. I asked Ji Yu Chongsheng to help her check in. This was probably inviting a wolf into the house. My grandmother's fall was serious, and during that time, I was constantly shuttling between the northern city and home, not noticing Ji Yu Chongsheng's strange behavior. It wasn't until Ji Yu Chongsheng's 28th birthday that he used the excuse of business to stay out. But I saw him in the parking garage. He was sitting in the front passenger seat. Shang Nuan was clinging to him, kissing him, her arms wrapped around his neck. The window was rolled down halfway, and I saw the usual calm in his eyes, now filled with raw desire. He held her by the back of the neck, and the sounds of their intimacy pierced my eardrums. In that moment, I was struck by lightning. I rushed forward and slammed my bag against the car window. Shang Nuan, like a frightened deer, hid in Ji Yu Chongsheng's arms. But he didn't panic. Instead, he decisively held her in his embrace. It was my choice. Don't blame her, she's just like I was, brought into the mountains. I was the one who fell for her first. Zhang Yu, maybe there was never love between us, just a misunderstanding between family and love. When I met Nuan, I realized my feelings could be this intense. Back when I was 19 and I climbed a snowy mountain to confess to you. That feeling wasn't intense enough. At 23, when we were on that windy island and we made love, it was just family affection. It was then that I learned Ji Yu Chongsheng and Shang Nuan had been secretly involved for almost 6 months. While I was away on business, the girl I had sponsored was wearing my pajamas, climbing into my marital bed, and being intimate with my husband. Not just on the bed, but on the couch, the dining room table, the balcony, the garden. I heard Shang Nuan apologizing nervously. Sis Zhang, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to steal your man. I love Chongsheng so much. You've helped me for so many years. Please help me once more and give him to me. Unlike my humiliation, Shang Nuan was draped in Ji Yu Chongsheng's perfectly ironed suit, holding his hand with their fingers intertwined. I then noticed she was wearing a blue diamond on her finger, compared to my white diamond. Hers and Ji Yu Chongsheng's rings seemed like a pair. In that moment, I felt drained of all strength and leaned against the pillar, looking at Ji Yu Chongsheng. Let's get a divorce. I thought he would agree since he had found his true love. But to my surprise, Ji Yu Chongsheng refused. The reason he gave wasn't because of lingering feelings or reluctance. It was because he was fighting for the family inheritance. He had done so well in the company, and old Master Ji Yu was considering handing over the family business to him. At times like this, he didn't want any negative news coming out. He refused to divorce, but Shang Nuan couldn't stand it. She found out my grandmother's address and went to the mountain to find her. By then, my grandmother was able to walk with a cane. But I hadn't told her about the divorce to avoid worrying her. The day before, I spoke to my grandmother on the phone and told her everything was fine. She was sitting in her rattan chair under the osmanthus tree, smiling and planning to make me osmanthus cake the next time I came home. But the next day, Shang Nuan found my grandmother. She showed her the ultrasound of my pregnancy and said a light-hearted line. You can receive such good treatment here because your granddaughter exchanged it for this child. She knew how to press my grandmother's soft spot. Ji Yu Chongsheng didn't love me, didn't want me to have this child. If it weren't for my grandmother's illness, I would have divorced him long ago. It was you who dragged her down. I received the news of my grandmother's death that afternoon. After checking the hospital surveillance footage, I found out that Shang Nuan had been there. But Ji Yu Chongsheng had promised me that he wouldn't let her get near my grandmother again. That day, I knelt in front of my grandmother's hospital bed and bowed 3 times. Then, I went straight to Ji Yu Chongsheng's company. I didn't care about my dignity and publicly lashed out at him, hitting and biting him in the streets like a madwoman. I even went to Shang Nuan's school, grabbed her by the hair, and made her secret affair with Ji Yu Chongsheng public. I thought, since everything is ruined, we might as well all go down together. The scene escalated quickly, reaching the ears of the higher-ups in the Ji Yu family. In the face of absolute wealth, honor and shame mean nothing. Soon, they concluded the matter, claiming that I had suffered a mental breakdown due to my grandmother's death. Because of this breakdown, I had attacked my husband in public. Because of this breakdown, I spread rumors that the girl I had sponsored was his mistress. No one believed my side of the story. Shang Nuan got back on track with her life. And Ji Yu Chongsheng took this opportunity to divorce me. He didn't have much property under his name. Most of it belonged to the Ji Yu family or was notarized before our marriage. I only received 700,000 yuan. I took the 700,000, along with my grandmother's ashes, and returned to my hometown to bury her. Actually, on the day of the burial, I prepared a knife, intending to follow my grandmother. I had grown up without parents, first relying on my grandmother, then on Ji Yu Chongsheng. Now, I was all alone, and I thought I might as well reunite with my grandmother. The wind blew open the yellowed book on the table, revealing my grandmother's handwriting, recording her unfulfilled wishes. She said she wanted to plant a vegetable garden behind the house and grow more okra, my favorite. She said she wanted to set up a swing in the garden, so I could play with my future baby. She also said she wanted to put up a flower rack in front of the window, because I loved fresh flowers. I stared at the book for a long time, then put the knife down. I decided to fulfill my grandmother's unaccomplished wishes one by one. I set up the garden, the swing, and the flower rack. By the time it was done, it was already the spring of the next year. I picked up the small knife again. But this time, I felt a slight movement in my belly. My periods had always been irregular, so at first, I didn't think much of it. But the movement didn't stop. It felt like someone was calling me. I froze for a moment and suddenly remembered a day after my miscarriage. That day, Ji Yu Chongsheng, who hadn't been home for a long time, suddenly returned. He smelled strongly of alcohol and walked straight into my room, pulling me into his arms. At the time, I had just miscarried less than a month ago, my body still weak. I didn't understand why he, having found true love, would still do this with me. I felt disgusted and used all my strength to resist. But the difference in strength between a man and a woman was too great. I remember the pain in my body, as if my limbs were being torn apart, my nails digging deep into the bed. It was then that I became pregnant. The thought overwhelmed me. I sat by my grandmother's grave for an entire afternoon. The spring breeze was soft and gentle, like her caress. As the sunset descended, I stood up, deciding to keep the child growing inside me, and live on. My grandmother had said, it didn't matter if I took the wrong path. The road ahead was still wide, and I shouldn't trap myself in a dead end. At least now, I had Zhang Cheng. I played with Zhang Cheng downstairs in the community. Due to her health, Zhang Cheng had never been very active. Today, she met some kids her age, and they all gathered to play on the slide. I sat on the side, lazily soaking up the sun. Suddenly, I heard a voice. So, you live here? I froze for a moment, looked up, and saw Ji Yu Chongsheng standing in front of me. This was an old community, the outer walls peeling off. And here he was, dressed in a high-end suit, completely out of place. What are you doing here? I asked him. Ji Yu Chongsheng replied bluntly, I followed your car here. His eyes fell on Zhang Cheng. who was playing on the slide. And he suddenly asked me in a low voice, Jong Yu, when we divorced, you only got 700,000. These years, how have you been raising a child and dealing with medical expenses? Zhang Sheng was diagnosed with a heart valve defect when she was just over 1 year old. When I heard the news, it felt like the world was crashing down on me. The saying, when it rains, it pours, was true. When I didn't have enough money, I sold the house and rented another one with Zhang Cheng. I returned to my old profession to make money and hired a part-time maid to look after her. Life was a patchwork, but I managed to get by. I didn't say anything, just replied calmly. Zhang Cheng is very well behaved. Doesn't cause any trouble. Zhang Cheng? Like the orange fruit Zhang? Ji Yu Changsheng's gaze narrowed slightly, as if lost in thought. I remember you really liked eating oranges. Back at your grandmother's place, every time the orange tree bore fruit, you'd climb up to pick them. Half you'd eat directly, and half you'd have your grandmother juice them for you. She'd wear an apron and fill up a whole glass for us. I didn't want to engage with him anymore, so I interrupted him. Your son was just born. It's not appropriate for you to be here with me. Ji Yu Changsheng didn't answer my question, but suddenly asked me, Zhang Yu, a child's growth can't lack a father's love. Have you thought about finding Zhang Cheng's father? I looked at Ji Yu Changsheng, and for a moment, I felt both ridiculous and amused. What? Do you want us to remarry? Before he could answer, my phone rang, interrupting our conversation. Ji Yu Changsheng ignored it the first time, but the phone rang again. He answered, and a familiar female voice came through the receiver. Changsheng, didn't you say you'd buy a longevity lock for the baby? It's been so long, haven't you bought it yet? Ji Yu Changsheng's tone was calm, clearly lying, but he wasn't flustered at all. I bought it. I'm on my way to drop it off. I'll be there soon. After hanging up, he didn't speak again, but just leaned against the bench, watching Zhang Cheng. When we got married, I always dreamed of having a child with you. I hoped it would be a daughter, a sweet, soft girl. Turns out we really have a daughter. With your eyes, my face. She's grown so big. For the first time, a soft look appeared in his eyes. Zhang Yu, does Zhang Cheng have a longevity lock? He suddenly turned to ask me. A longevity lock? Raising a child costs a lot. Milk powder, diapers, clothes, shoes. Anything related to babies doubles in price, not to mention the medical expenses. I shook my head. No, I always felt that, given our relationship, it wasn't right for us to sit on the same bench together. Just then, Zhang Cheng was tired from playing, and I waved for her to come over. She obediently ran to me, and I held her hand, like usual, heading home. As if Ji Yu Changsheng didn't exist. When we got home, I saw him still standing by the slide at the community entrance. Lost in thought, I closed the curtain behind me. But fate is strange. In these 4 years, Ji Yu Changsheng and I hadn't met. But just a few days later, we saw each other again. To be exact, he was looking for Zhang Cheng. Zhang Cheng had started preschool. The kindergarten was close to my law firm, so I usually picked her up after work. That day, I had a meeting, so I messaged the teacher to let them know I'd be late. By the time I arrived at the kindergarten, it was already dark, and light rain had started to fall. I walked into the office and saw Ji Yu Changsheng sitting with Zhang Cheng and the teacher. He had his back to me and didn't notice my arrival. His hand was bandaged, and Zhang Cheng was carefully wiping the blood off his hand with a wet wipe. Then pulling out a small band-aid with a pig on it. She puffed her cheeks and blew on his hand while seriously saying, Mom said if you blow on it, it won't hurt anymore. Ji Yu Changsheng smiled softly and reached out, as if to pat her head. I walked in, pulling Zhang Cheng behind me. Ji Yu Changsheng's hand fell empty, and he looked up at me with a faint smile still on his face. I asked him, what are you doing here? The teacher explained first. This gentleman said he's your friend and was waiting here with Zhang Cheng. I thanked the teacher and left with Zhang Cheng. The rain was getting heavier, and Ji Yu Changsheng's car was still parked outside the kindergarten. But he was following us slowly from behind. Zhang Yu, before we crossed the zebra crossing, he suddenly called out to me, don't misunderstand. I'm just here to give Zhang Cheng something. He opened the gift box he'd been holding and revealed a longevity lock with koi fish and lotus carvings inside. I bought a longevity lock for Zhang Cheng. I know she's grown up now and might not need it, but it's for good luck. I was going to give it to her directly, but she wouldn't accept it, saying she couldn't take things from strangers. I looked down at Zhang Cheng and patted her head. You did the right thing. You shouldn't take things from strangers. Then I looked back at Jiyu Chongsheng and said seriously, Zhang Cheng and I are doing just fine. Please don't come to disturb our lives. Take care of yourself. As the light turned green, and the rain pattered down. I didn't hear what he said next. I just held Zhang Cheng's hand and went home. Mama, do you not like that uncle? Zhang Cheng sensed my mood and explained. I saw that his hand was hurt, so I felt sorry for him and gave him a band-aid. Mama, if you don't like him, I won't talk to him next time. I've always believed that adult emotions shouldn't affect children. Yes, Mama doesn't like him, but Zhang Cheng doesn't need to worry about that. Zhang Cheng can continue to be a kind little girl. By the way, I tapped Zhang Cheng's little head. Did you like the gift just now? Tell me honestly. Zhang Cheng hesitated but nodded. It's shiny and pretty. We happened to pass a gold store, and I took Zhang Cheng inside. Today I got a performance bonus, so Mama's little savings grew a bit. Pick out your favorite style. Mama will buy you a longevity lock. Zhang Cheng had reached the age where she looked at prices. She chose carefully and finally pointed to the cheapest one, saying, Mama, I like this one. She was trying to save me money, worried that I was too tired. After I bought it, she happily wore the longevity lock with a red string back home, the golden lock swinging in front of her. I didn't expect this little longevity lock to cause her trouble. The law firm is holding an annual meeting, and family members are invited. I brought Zhang Cheng with me. When we arrived at the hotel, I saw the words, Celebration of Full Moon, written on the balloon arch. On the same day, the son of Mr. Ji Yu from Huayang Group was celebrating his full moon, and his banquet was also upstairs. Coincidentally, both events were on the same floor. To get to the annual meeting room, I had to pass by the entrance of the full moon banquet. So, I inevitably saw Shang Nuan and Jiyu Chongsheng standing at the door greeting guests. It had been years since we last met, and Shang Nuan had shed the youthful awkwardness from when I first saw her. She was wearing an expensive gown, sparkling with jewels, and looked exactly like the wealthy wife image I had imagined. She was holding a child in her arms, standing next to Jiyu Chongsheng, and at first glance, they seemed like a good match. I didn't stop. I walked past with Zhang Cheng, through the entrance of the full moon banquet. Some people's gazes landed on me. I didn't turn around, but that gaze seemed tangible, following me closely. Halfway through the annual meeting, I took Zhang Cheng to the restroom, and I ran into Shang Nuan at the door. She seemed like she wanted to greet me, but after seeing Zhang Cheng by my side, she froze for a moment. The smile that had been on her well-maintained face gradually disappeared. Zhang Yu, how do you have a child? Whose child is this? Actually, there was no need for me to answer. Zhang Cheng's appearance had already given her the answer. Her brow furrowed tighter, and she suddenly raised her voice. Zhang Yu, aren't you disgusting? You know Jiyu Chongsheng loves me. So why did you deliberately get pregnant with his child and give birth to it? Didn't the last time you were sent to the operating room for an abortion teach you a lesson? I let Zhang Cheng go into the restroom by herself and looked down at Shang Nuan. Watch your mouth. When I got pregnant with Cheng Cheng, Jiyu Chongsheng and I hadn't divorced yet. We were still a legal couple. And you, what right do you have to stand here and criticize? Shang Nuan looked at me for a long time, then coldly said, I'll tell Chongsheng. If he finds out you secretly gave birth to his child, he will never let you off. He already knows. I reminded her. The day your son was born, he met Cheng Cheng at the hospital. Shang Nuan immediately fell silent. Just as Cheng Cheng came out of the restroom, I was about to take her back to the annual meeting room. But Shang Nuan's gaze fell on the red string around her neck. She suddenly reached out and grabbed the red string. The longevity lock hidden under the clothes was yanked out. And Zhang Cheng stumbled, almost falling to the ground. I quickly protected her in my arms and slapped Shang Nuan's hand away. What are you doing? The shopkeeper told me Jiyu Chongsheng bought 2 longevity locks. I wondered why he only brought one back. So it turns out the other one is for your daughter. Zhang Yu, don't you know to keep your distance from other people's husbands? Destroying someone else's family is shameful. This was such an absurd thing to say that it almost made me laugh. Before I could answer, I suddenly heard Jiyu Chongsheng's voice from behind, low and cold. I did buy 2, but the one I got for Cheng Cheng, she wouldn't accept it. This is the one she bought herself. From the beginning, she's been keeping her distance from me. I didn't want to be involved with them anymore, but as I passed Shang Nuan, I whispered, when you've been Mrs. Ji Yu for so long, have you forgotten how you got into this position? Marriage means nothing to him. Don't you realize that? Shang Nuan's figure staggered, her face turning pale. After saying this, I walked right past her. The annual meeting was full of toasts and cheers. and I don't like to drink, but out of courtesy, I had a little. I didn't drive today, planning to take a cab. The annual meeting ended later than the full moon banquet. And when I left, the other banquet hall was already empty. As I reached the entrance, ready to get a cab, a black sedan stopped in front of me. The window rolled down, and Ji Chongsheng looked up at me. Get in, I'll take you home. I shook my head and took a step back. He tilted his head and laughed softly. I'm not that scary, am I? I've consulted an expert about the post-surgery recovery for valve surgery. And I've bought the best post-surgery medication. Let's talk inside, since it involved Zhongqing's health and I didn't want to draw attention in the hotel parking lot. I got into Ji Chongsheng's car. He repeated what the doctor said to me and handed me the medicine. Then there was a long silence. I didn't respond to him. Instead, I focused on talking to Zhongqing about tomorrow's plans. What do you want to eat tomorrow, Mama? Can we have sweet and sour pork? Oh, and also, guo bao ru and osmanthus cake. Her tastes were just like mine. When I was little, I loved sweet dishes and would always ask my grandmother to make them for me. I don't know many dishes, but most of them were what my grandmother taught me. Okay, but let's add stir-fried broccoli. It's a good balance of meat and vegetables. Zhongqing nodded earnestly. Okay. The reflection in the rearview mirror showed Zhongqing's smiling face. Ji Chongsheng quietly listened to her chatter, and the usually stern look on his face softened a bit, showing a slight smile. Cheng looks so much like you. I remember these were all Grandma's signature dishes. I ate a lot back then, half a bowl for me alone every time. And the plate would always be empty when the dishes were served. I didn't respond to him, but gently stroked Zhongqing's long hair. Seeing that I didn't reply, he changed the subject. Cheng, she's very cute, unlike my son, who cries all the time. You can't compare a 1-month-old baby with a 3 or 4-year-old girl. A baby can only express their needs by crying. And when Cheng was young, she was like that, and 3 or 4 years old, they're at that naive, innocent age, soft and plump. The car quickly reached the community, and just before getting out, I heard Ji Chongsheng suddenly say, Zhang Yu, I always feel like, when I'm with you and Cheng, it feels like home. I looked up at him. Don't forget how much effort you put in to marry Shang Nuan. Saying this now is inappropriate. Don't bring it up again. I opened the car door and got out with Zhongqing. Before leaving, I heard Ji Chongsheng's phone ring again. Actually, his phone had been vibrating non-stop throughout the entire ride. The caller ID was Nuan, and it was a call from Shang Nuan. He ignored it all the way but eventually answered. The phone was connected to the car Bluetooth, and since the car window wasn't rolled up, I could clearly hear the conversation. Shang Nuan's voice mixed with the sound of a baby crying. Chongsheng, where have you been? Why aren't you answering the phone? The relatives are all at home, and the baby's spitting up. Please come back soon. Zhongsheng didn't look down at the road and tripped on a stone. Cheng, I quickly reached out to steady her. In the quiet night, my voice sounded a bit out of place, and it reached Shang Nuan's ears through the phone. She froze for a moment, then her voice rose. Zhang Yu? Ji Chongsheng, why are you with Zhang Yu? What are you two doing? Your baby just turned 1 month old, and you're not going home. You're looking for your ex-wife? How can you treat us like this? I didn't listen to the rest of what she said. I took a few steps with Zhongqing, leaving that place of trouble behind. As we passed a corner, I caught a glimpse of Ji Chongsheng's figure. He was leaning against the driver's seat, seemingly saying something, his face full of exhaustion and annoyance. Beicheng is a big city. Big enough that I could never run into Ji Chongsheng during my hardest times. But Beicheng is also small enough that whenever he wants to see me, he can always find a way to make it happen. In the cafe downstairs from the law firm, at the hospital's follow-up appointment, at a business dinner I attended. But he always silently observed, and I never greeted him. It seemed like a delicate balance. Until Shang Nuan approached me. When I saw Shang Nuan again this time, her complexion wasn't good. She had thick makeup on, but it couldn't cover the dark circles under her eyes. She placed her bag on the table and said, Zhang Yu, name your price. What? I've checked up on your life these past few years. You've been living badly, raising a sick child, sold your house, borrowed money, and rented in an old rundown place. She tapped the table with her extended nails. When you divorced Chong Zheng, it was so messy. I thought you'd never want to see him again. But now here you are, calmly facing him. You're here to ask for money, right? Tell me, how much do you want? Just stop bothering my husband. I looked at her without saying a word. In the silence, her expression stiffened even more, urging me, Jongyu? I haven't bothered him. He's the one who keeps disturbing me. When I found out Jiyu Chongjang was cheating, I immediately confronted him. What about you? When you found your husband was changing his heart, why didn't you confront him, but came to me instead? Her face turned pale with anger, gritting her teeth and saying, You're lying. He hasn't changed his heart. He told me before, between you and him, it was just family affection. He never liked you. Besides, we still have a son now. I looked at her, faintly showing signs of hysteria, and calmly said, Think whatever you want. The more someone fears losing something, the more they want to hold onto it. But what she's trying to grasp is a handful of sand. The tighter she holds it, the faster it slips through her fingers. I'm busy. I don't have time to waste on her. Recently, my boss has taken up matchmaking and introduced me to a man. At first, I declined politely, but he was too enthusiastic. So I didn't want to embarrass him and agreed to meet him. We met at a Western restaurant, at a window side seat. We had a simple meal, and I told him I wasn't interested in remarriage at the moment. He nodded, and after the meal, we each paid and left. He had just left when Jiyu Chongjang appeared at the door of the restaurant. His brows furrowed as he looked at me and asked, Who was that man? My blind date. I bypassed him and headed for the door. But just as I took a step, he grabbed my wrist. I glanced at his hand, signaling him to let go. But he tightened his grip, his lips pressed together, his voice heavy. I think I'm jealous. I realize, my feelings for you are not just family affection. If I said I still love you, I still remember in the underground parking lot. He held Shang Nuan, his eyes cold as he told me he never loved me. He said everything between us was just family affection mistaken for love. During the time of my most intense emotional struggles, I often thought of this statement. Was it really just family affection? The first time we kissed, his flushed face and the rapid beating of his heart weren't acting. When he climbed the snow mountain to confess his love for me, his burning gaze wasn't acting. The stubbornness under the pressure of the Gu family. The sincerity when he kneeled to put a ring on my finger. And the tears at our wedding, they were all real. Maybe love gradually turns into family affection over time. But love is still the underlying foundation. Just with more responsibility from deep emotional bonding. And his so-called family affection was just an excuse for his infidelity. I looked at him and softly smiled. And then? He hesitated for a moment, then spoke. Cheng Cheng should have a complete family. You have a wife and children. Isn't it ridiculous for you to say this to me? I reminded him. When family was mentioned, Jiyu Chongjang fell silent, his brows tightly furrowed. A deep look of exhaustion flashing in his eyes. It was probably because Shang Nuan had been causing a ruckus at home recently. I freed my wrist from his grip and walked forward. Grandmother passed away in the winter months. And before I knew it, it was her anniversary. I took time off and took Zhongcheng back to my hometown. My hometown is in the mountains, with winding roads that turn and twist. Finally, we arrived at the old house with a swing and a garden. Since no one had lived there for a long time, the house was covered in dust. But the garden was filled with wildflowers, adding a touch of life to the cold winter. Zhongcheng asked, Mom, whose house is this? I showed her an old photo. This was your great-grandmother's house. I'll tell you a secret. Actually, your great-grandmother found me and raised me. I was born in a patriarchal village. When my parents discovered I was a girl, they abandoned me. If grandmother hadn't picked me up, I wouldn't have survived. In fact, grandmother had her own children, a son. Her marriage was unhappy, and after discovering her husband's betrayal, in that ignorant and backward era, she bravely chose to divorce. Her son insisted on staying with his father and calling another woman mother, just because his father was wealthier. Grandmother didn't try to stop them and cut ties with them. She worked tirelessly in the small mountain village, planting rice, with the days passing in the crowing of roosters. One rare snowy winter, when she came back from the back mountain, she found me. Out of sympathy, she took me home and raised me. Looking back, I can probably guess the reason Shang Nuan collapsed with a stroke after she met grandmother. She had experienced the pain of betrayal. Because of empathy, it hurt even more. What's worse, Jiyu Chongjang was the child she had watched grow up and sent away from the mountains. Grandmother never said it, but I knew, for a long time. She had treated Jiyu Chongjang like her own son. And then, the person she trusted most gave her the deepest betrayal. How could she take it? I brought a plate of grandmother's favorite oranges to her grave. The tombstone was green, and the north wind seemed to soften as it reached here. Cheng Cheng, if it weren't for your great-grandmother, there wouldn't be a mother like me now. She saved me twice. The first time, when I was born, she picked me up and gave me food and warmth. The second time, when I wanted to hurt myself, she used a wish book to bring me back to life. I bowed 3 times at her grave. Grandmother, you told me to move forward, that the road would open up as I walked. I listened to you, and I've come this far. You said not to hold grudges, so I've tried to live well. But grandmother, you also taught me, repay kindness with kindness. Repay hatred with hatred. Do you remember? My grandmother wasn't a soft pushover. When she was young and lived alone, the local thugs would whistle at her. She'd throw manure on them. When the neighbors thought she was easy to bully, they wanted to build their house on her land. She stood in her field with a hoe and crushed anyone who dared to touch her land. When I was bullied at school, grandmother went to the school and beat up the boys who bullied me. Do I hate Jiyu Chongjang? Yes. I don't hate him for abandoning our relationship. I hate him for making grandmother pass away with worries and concerns for me. Grandmother, all these years, my heart has carried a thorn. I want to pull it out. Is that okay? The winter wind blew over the grass. The smell of grass mixed in the wind, just like the scent of the old lady who had spent her life farming. I knew grandmother would agree. She always did. From when I was little, she would always indulge me. When I returned to the old house, I packed lightly and stayed there for a few days with Zhang Cheng. Jiyu Changgang didn't know I had gone back to the mountain village, but it seemed like he was looking for me. My colleague said he came to the law firm to inquire about my whereabouts. Late one night, I received a phone call. The person on the other end stayed silent for a long time, with only the howling wind as if mourning. I guessed who it was and asked, "Is there something?" "No," he said, and hung up. Just as I was about to press the hang up button, he stopped me. "Wait, Zhang Yu, let's remarry." When Jiyu Changgang said this, I wasn't really surprised. On one side was his divorced ex-wife and their lovely daughter. On the other side was his suspicious wife and crying son. Jiyu Changgang was capable of betraying his wife once, so he could do it again. I gave a slight smile. "What? You want to commit bigamy?" He said. "I've divorced Shang Nuan. Don't lie to me. According to the law, the man cannot propose a divorce within a year after the woman gives birth, unless the woman agrees. Shang Nuan had just managed to get into this position. How could she bear to leave?" Jiyu Changgang's voice was cold and firm. He said, "I will find a way." I could probably guess what Jiyu Changgang's so-called way was. It was nothing more than offering money. Using money to get Shang Nuan to agree. But he underestimated Shang Nuan. A woman who seduced a married man when she was still in college couldn't be easily dealt with. Securing the position of Mrs. Jiyu was obviously more beneficial to her. I didn't get involved in their marital affairs. After returning to Bay City with Zhang Cheng, life went on as usual. However, Jiyu Changgang started trying to infiltrate my life. My indifference and disregard only made him more persistent. People are strange. They don't cherish what they have but get restless once it's lost. Jiyu Changgang and Shang Nuan's relationship gradually soured. On Christmas Day, I took Zhang Cheng to a beautiful restaurant for dinner. Jiyu Changgang sat at a table next to us, quietly watching. When I was helping Zhang Cheng try some desserts, Shang Nuan suddenly stormed over. She flipped the tablecloth and angrily asked, "Zhang Yu, what do you want? Are you happy monopolizing another woman's husband?" I remained silent because I saw Jiyu Changgang walk over and stand in front of me. Just like back then in the underground parking lot, he looked at Shang Nuan coldly. "It has nothing to do with her. If you're angry, take it out on me." Perhaps Jiyu Changgang's gaze triggered something in Shang Nuan. She hysterically shouted at him, "Is this sickly daughter all you care about? Your son has had a fever for a whole day. How can you bear to not check on him?" She wasn't wearing makeup today. Her face was pale, showing clear signs of fatigue. I suddenly realized that time really does leave marks on everyone. When I first saw her at the train station, she spoke with slightly awkward Mandarin. Dressed simply, her black and white eyes full of hope for the future. Now, she looked like an exhausted woman who had been through many years. A bad relationship truly wears people down. There wasn't a trace of sympathy in Jiyu Changgang's eyes. He simply said calmly, "If you can't take it, then divorce." Shang Nuan staggered. "Divorce? I won't divorce. I won't agree to it. Then we'll drag it out until the child is 1 year old, and I'll file for divorce. You know, I can get the best lawyer. When I say I'll divorce, I will." Shang Nuan looked at Jiyu Changgang silently for a moment, as if she had made up her mind, then turned and left. Across from the law firm, There was the best postnatal recovery center in the city, where Shang Nuan appeared frequently. She started going to yoga studios and beauty salons, and her makeup became more refined. More than a month later, I received a multimedia message. It was a pregnancy ultrasound report. Shang Nuan was pregnant. When I saw the report, I wasn't too surprised. Jiyu Changgang had this ability to say he loved one woman, and yet climb into another woman's bed. Shang Nuan sent me a message. As long as the child hasn't reached 1 year old, he can't divorce me. If I could have one child, I can have a second. The most desperate method is to use a child to bind a man. What's more, she was dealing with Jiyu Changgang. I replied, let's see if you can carry the baby to term first. When Jiyu Changgang found out about this, he was waiting for Zhang Cheng to finish school. Zhang Cheng came out with her little school bag, holding my hand and calling me mom. Knowing I didn't like Jiyu Changgang, she had become cold towards him. But that day, unexpectedly, she handed him a piece of candy that the teacher had given her. Jiyu Changgang hesitated for a moment, then took it, his eyes lighting up. Then, he received Shang Nuan's pregnancy report. She's pregnant and even contacted me. I looked at him indifferently. Congratulations. You're going to be a father again. Jiyu Changgang's face didn't show any joy at the news of his wife's pregnancy. That cold, restless look, I was all too familiar with it. He had looked at me with the same expression back then, telling me that since we were destined for divorce, we should never have any further entanglements. And this time, the person across from him was Shang Nuan. He explained to me, I didn't plan to touch her. It was a business party. I drank too much, and I was confused. I'll take care of this. He was still using the same method, forcibly taking her to the operating table and forcing Shang Nuan to abort the baby. Shang Nuan struggled fiercely, her nails digging into the wood chips, leaving blood all over her hands. Jiyu Changgang, how did you become like this? How could you do this to me? But he had always been this way, determined to get whatever he wanted, eliminating all obstacles. Back when Shang Nuan was trying to marry him, she thought she could take shelter under a big tree. But under a big tree, no big grass grows. The tree could protect her from the wind, but it could also block out the sunlight. After Shang Nuan's miscarriage, Jiyu Changgang didn't let anyone take care of her. It was Shang Nuan's foster mother who rushed from the countryside to look after her. Jiyu Changgang focused on getting closer to me and Zhang Cheng, and I kept rejecting him because he had a family. His patience with Shang Nuan finally ran out. He drew up a divorce agreement and forced Shang Nuan to sign it. I hadn't been to the Jiyu family's villa in years. The day of the divorce agreement signing, I still didn't go. But I knew what had happened inside, because Shang Nuan's foster mother made a video call to me. When she called, Shang Nuan was standing barefoot on the balcony railing. She hadn't recovered from childbirth, and after quickly becoming pregnant again and then having a miscarriage, it had caused great harm to her body. Though I was far away, I could still see her graying hair. Jiyu Changgang was forcing her to sign. She looked at him tearfully, her eyes full of disbelief. I've been with you since college. You taught me how to live, how to experience the world, how to love freely. I had no father growing up. To me, you were the guide. We were supposed to be a happy family. So why did you suddenly say you don't love me anymore? Jiyu Changgang didn't answer, just urged, sign it. If you force me to sign, I'll jump off from here today. Shang Nuan stood on the 4th floor railing, her hair blowing in the wind. Her foster mother begged me, Ms. Zhang, I'm very grateful for your help to Nuan back then. Please, can you talk to Jiyu Changgang? Nuan says he wants a divorce because of you. They have a child. You're a mother too. You should know how important it is for a child to have a complete family. Actually, not every child needs a complete family. Many East Asian families are incomplete, and it's common for fathers to be absent. As long as love is intact, that's enough. Shang Nuan's foster mother cried as she begged me, say something, please. Though Nuan is my foster daughter, I've always treated her like my own child. She's my only daughter, but I only have one grandmother. I looked at them in silence, watching Jiyu Changgang relentlessly push her, feeling a sense of sadness. I remembered when I had a breakdown and was locked in the villa by Jiyu Changgang. I walked like a madwoman from the 1st floor to the 4th, touching every inch of the floor and hitting every railing. The 4th floor railing was loose after I hit it. People like Shang Nuan would talk about ending their lives, but I didn't think she would actually jump. She had not made a move yet. But at the moment when Jiyu Changgang closed in on her, she said, do you know why I found Zhang Yu's grandmother? Because you've been together for 20 years. The bond is too deep. I was afraid one day you would regret it and come back to her. I wanted to create some gap so you would never see each other again. The first time I sought out Jong Yu's grandmother, I really hoped she would convince Jong Yu to divorce. The second time, because nothing makes a person remember more than the death of a loved one. Ji Yu Chonggong, even if. Her voice cut off abruptly. The railing was narrow, and she stood at the exact spot I had crashed into in my despair. Life is full of coincidences. In the video, Shang Nuan lost her balance and fell straight from the 4th floor. Shang Nuan died. She was still breathing when she was sent to the hospital, but they couldn't save her. Ji Yu Chonggong said to the public that she had committed suicide. The reason was postnatal depression. A very perfect, all-encompassing excuse. I don't know what Ji Yu Chonggong and Shang Nuan's foster mother discussed. Only that she returned to her hometown overnight. At Shang Nuan's funeral, Ji Yu Chonggong shed a few tears, making the news and garnering sympathy. After the funeral, he sent me a message. I'm single now, and I've avenged your grandmother's death. Can we be together now? I looked out the window at the falling snow. Compared to Shang Nuan, I always thought Ji Yu Chonggong was the one who bore more responsibility. He grew up eating his grandmother's rice, wearing the clothes his grandmother sewed. After grandmother found out about the divorce, apart from anger, she felt more guilt and regret. She regretted not seeing through his character and entrusting me to him. If the blame for this was 40% Shang Nuan's, then Ji Yu Chonggong should bear 60%. Even so, I replied an hour later. Let's try. At the time, I was telling Zhang Cheng a historical story, and we reached the part about Sun Bin pretending to be mad. Zhang Cheng asked, Mom, why did Sun Bin pretend to be mad? Because Peng Wan was jealous of his talent and removed his kneecaps. To survive and take revenge, he had to pretend to be crazy and fool Peng Wan into lowering his guard. She looked at me, trying to understand. I thought about it and tried to simplify it. Sometimes, to achieve a goal, you have to do things you don't want to do, even if it goes against your conscience. For example, the teacher says the first prize for handicrafts gets a little red flower. But you don't like making crafts. But for the flower, you still do it, right? I felt like I was going off topic, so I closed the book. Let's stop here for today. Zhang Cheng looked at me and softly said, Mom, have you ever forced yourself to do something you didn't want to do? I paused for a moment and nodded. Yes. Ji Yu Chonggong officially inserted himself into my life with Zhang Cheng. He openly ate meals with us, picked up Zhang Cheng from kindergarten, and took her for checkups. I remained indifferent, but he seemed to enjoy it more and more. He began trying to get Zhang Cheng to call him Dad. Zhang Cheng, though she was friendly, was stubborn and insisted on calling him Uncle. Ji Yu Chonggong was both angry and amused. I'm your real dad. Zhang Cheng pursed her lips and handed him a cup of water. Uncle, have some water. He also took me and Zhang Cheng to his new villa. The house had been tainted by Shang Nuan's death, so he didn't like it. He had a separate villa for office use, so he moved there instead. Zhang Cheng, being a child, loved playing hide and seek in the large villa. She hid, and I searched, opening every door of the villa. At first, Ji Yu Chonggong was a little hesitant. Zhang Cheng looked up at him and said softly, I'll hide and won't move around, please, Uncle. Unable to resist her pleading, he reluctantly agreed after some warnings. One night at the villa, he tried to get me to go to his room. I shook my head. Let's talk about it after we remarry. He couldn't marry me right now. After all, in the public eye, his ex-wife had just passed away from depression. So for the sake of his image, he couldn't marry me in the short term. Normally, Zhang Cheng wasn't very clingy, but at the villa, she insisted on sleeping with me. In the velvet-carpeted hallway, Ji Yu Chonggong looked at me, a bit curious. Zhang Yu, I feel like you've changed a lot since we reconciled. I didn't answer, just asked him. Do you like it? He smiled. Yes. Next time, on Grandma's anniversary, let's go visit her together. It's been so many years, I should go see her too. But Ji Yu Chonggong would never reach Grandma's grave. Ji Yu Chonggong was a stubborn, cold person. Someone like him would inevitably resort to ruthless, bloody methods and would never be clean. Ever since he took over the group, with fewer restrictions, he started acting recklessly. Illegal business practices, rigging bids, bribery. From what I've observed and understood recently, he had clearly crossed many legal red lines. But I kept quiet. Before Ji Yu Chonggong left for a meeting in the South City, he suddenly told me, Zhang Yu, after this meeting, I'll be free for a while. Let's go abroad and get married. Then go to Norway and Switzerland for our honeymoon. We'll take Zhang Cheng with us. He rubbed Zhang Cheng's head. Zhang Cheng. You'll call me dad then. I smiled at him. Okay, then. I spent 3 days writing a complete chain of evidence and started a live stream online, publicly reporting Ji Changgang. The public opinion quickly spiraled, and the stream was forcibly cut off. I sat in front of the computer screen, smiling, just as expected. The Ji family reacted quickly, but it was fine. The live stream was just a distraction. I had already submitted a detailed report. Sometimes, I feel really lucky that during all those years I loved Ji Changgang. I never abandoned myself. I kept studying well, choosing a profession I loved, and working in a job I enjoyed. The Ji family was deeply rooted, and I couldn't shake that big tree. So, the only thing I could rely on was the law I had studied for so many years. The phone rang, and as expected, it was Ji Changgang calling. Zhang Yu, have you gone crazy? How could you? I interrupted his questioning, smiling faintly. Ji Changgang, I've always had a question. In many stories, the female protagonist is tortured by the male protagonist to the brink of death. And in the end, the revenge she gives him is that he can never have her, regretting it for the rest of his life. But what kind of retribution is that? I closed my eyes, and my voice turned cold. I want you to experience true despair. In the end, Ji Changgang didn't make it abroad. The next time I saw his message, it was on the news. He had been detained. I didn't go to see him, just returned to my original life with Zhang Cheng. The next time we met, it was in court. Across the crowd, he looked at me, his expression dark. But his sharpness had dulled after long detention. During a break, I walked past him, and he called out to me. Why? His words were without context, but I knew what he was asking. He was asking me why I treated him this way. Because of hatred. Zhang Yu, from love comes hatred. You hate me because you still love me, don't you? I gently shook my head. Your affair. Looking back, I'm already indifferent to it. Would you hate someone who killed your loved one? That's the only reason I hate you. Ji Changgang, straightening his back in court, collapsed in that moment. I didn't tell him I had already seen him with Shang Nuan at the hospital during her pregnancy checkup. I didn't mention that the law firm's annual meeting room was arranged by me. There are many coincidences in the world, but more often, there are deliberate acts disguised as coincidences. I sat in the audience, listening as he was found guilty and sentenced. Suddenly, I thought of a line from Peach Blossom Fan *, watching him build the Red Tower. Watching him host the banquet. Watching the tower collapse. Collapsing utterly and completely. He looked at me, but I didn't look at him. I had only one thought. Winter is here again. It's so cold. I want to go back to the small mountain village in the south and fall into Grandma's arms to warm my hands. I resigned from my job in Bay City and returned to Grandma's small house. I scattered okra seeds in the vegetable garden. I placed a few newly cut wintersweet branches on the flower rack. Zhang Cheng really liked swinging on the swing. I pushed her from behind, and she swung very high, reaching up as if she could touch the sun in the sky. Grandma, do you see? Your granddaughter is finally walking on a wide road blessed by the sun. Zhang Cheng turned around and suddenly asked me, Mom, why am I named Zhang Cheng? Years ago, in the same spot, I had asked Grandma curiously, Grandma, why is the character, you, so hard to write? Why did you give me that name, a name rarely seen in the mountain village? She told me, when she was young, the village had a kiln factory, and she had worked there for a while making ceramics. Every time the unglazed ceramics went into the kiln, they had to be coated with glaze, which she found annoying. But she couldn't deny, glaze was a good thing. It made the texture smooth and protected the body firmly. Grandma wasn't well educated, but she liked it and wanted to use it on me. She said, must be strong and brave. She put a lot of thought into my name. As for Zhang Cheng's name, I smiled shyly. Oh, because your great-grandmother loved to eat oranges. It was a bit hasty. But Zhang Cheng looked at me and softly said, Mom, when you miss great-grandma, you can hug me. I froze for a moment. Zhang Cheng, I'll ask you a question too. I asked a question I had wondered about for a long time. Do you know who your biological father is? She nodded. Yes. Then why do you still call him uncle? Zhang Cheng answered without hesitation. Just because someone is related to me by blood doesn't mean they can be my dad. Only people Mommy approves of can be my dad. She jumped off the swing and into my arms. Mom, I'll always love you. Just like you always loved great-grandma. My eyes welled up, and I looked up into the void. Grandma, do you see? I'm doing well now. With a sweet and lovely daughter. Just as you hoped. Not resentful. Not angry. No attachments. Just following my heart.